the other file on, trying to be really with it. Guys, please leave the building as safely and quickly as you can and go to Assembly Point G on the car park, which is just outside those windows. Stay there until tonight's park officer says it is safe. Please don't simply go home because we have a list of who's in the building and will be, if the fire brigade after 10, they'll be trying to find you. Apologies for members who are absent or on official business. I have an apology from Councillor Jarvis, an apology from Councillor Parsons, an apology from Councillor Ridley, and an apology from Councillor Fowler. Councillor Media is substituting for Councillor Ridley. Are those apologies acceptable?
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests that you would like to disclose? Councillor Media.
I'd like to declose 6C at 1 Egan Close. I'm a chairman of Dordon Parish Council.
Thank you. Anything else, members? Are we all okay to note Councillor Media's declaration of interest? Agenda item 4 is the minutes of the board meeting held on the 3rd November. Are you all happy with our sound as an accurate record? So great. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 5 is the Hinkley and Bosworth Regulation 18 draft local plan consultation. Mr. Ditman.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall 10th of September last year, 20 September 2024, we had the start of the Hinkley and Bosworth issues and option regulation and consultation. This stage is an additional regulation 18, so it's in addition to the one we have already seen. As you will note from the report, the deadline for responses was the 28th of November, but we do have an extension to this Friday to get members' responses as well as the board report back to Hinkley and Bosworth for this consultation. Again, I would stress that this is in addition to the earlier consultation, which you may recall, in terms of the impact or the implications for North Warwickshire were fairly major in terms of the Fenny Drayton Lindley Village extension, which is northwest of Myra and east of Fenny Drayton, and the Longshoot expansion or potential expansion north of the Longshoot, 49 hectares for employment. This version has now an additional new settlement at North predominantly within Hinkley and Bosworth, but partially within northwest Leicestershire. This is literally northwest of Twycross, immediately in front of Twycross Zoo, and it will be for a new settlement proposal. So it's one of the options they're looking at. This is Hinkley and Bosworth Borough Council itself. They have approximately 15,000 houses required to find, and they're looking at 660 dwellings to deliver between now and 2045. So that gives you an idea of the period of time we're looking at. As before, we did raise issues around the A5, the implications for the A5 in terms of the increase in traffic, the current constraints the A5 has. This is in addition to that, so we are further going to respond and say we have concerns of potential highway implications, obviously from the north of the borough into the northern settlements, and again down the A444 onto the A5. I did note from previous consultations responses that concerns have already been raised, significant concerns on the implications of the Fenny Drayton and the Myra expansion and the Longshoot expansion, and we're assuming there will be similar concerns arising from this proposal. So this is the opportunity for members to make additional comments to those that are highlighted in the local planning consultation report that you've got in front of you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, any comments, questions?
Yeah, if I may. Right, have you ever looked at the system? Is it the general plan A5 orientated, or do they go across the other side of Leicestershire as well?
They go across the other side of Leicestershire.
Okay, thank you.
So, members, if you're all content with it, I think what essentially we're doing is we're broadly happy with the draft. with concerns on traffic and other implications for Warwickshire in terms of other infrastructure and a general desire to talk to Hinkley and Bolton about how we can work together in developing our respective municipal plans. So I'll propose that. Is there a second? Yes. Thank you very much. And all those in favour? Any against? Thanks very much. We then move on to the planning application, the first of which is for 22 to 24 Atherstone Road House. Mr. Ian Ritchie has indicated he'd like to speak, so if you take the chair, Mr. Ritchie, whilst Mr. Collins introduces his report. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application has been reported to the Planning and Development Board. It includes an objection from the Highway Authority. This relates to a footpath that's across the front of the site. Highways have objected in that the application originally included footpath in front, which it still includes now. There has been an ownership issue with part of it next to 22 Atherstone Road, which is in probate at the moment. The applicant, though, has intends to link into that footpath. Along with the scheme, there is a footpath crossing with drop curbs going to the other side of the road. Highways are slightly concerned that there is a theoretical reduction in the footpath at this point here, but actually on site there isn't. It is just a line in the air where it's owned by someone else, which the applicant's trying to resolve, and it will be resolved. The applicant is going to provide a footpath in front of the site where pedestrians can walk into the centre quite easily. It also provides this crossing point onto the other side of the road. Highways objections are purely theoretical. Your officers consider that the application should be approved because it has both the footpath across the road and the footpath in front of the site. Therefore, the recommendation is for approval.
I'm sure the board has never had a theoretical objection from anybody. Mr. Ritchie, welcome back to the council house. You're very welcome. My colleague, even though you probably know it, will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good afternoon. You have 3 minutes to speak. I'll stop when you start speaking. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you've got 1 minute outstanding.
Thank you very much, Chairman and members, for the opportunity to speak on this matter. It's a bit of a complex history as to why this application has been brought before you tonight. But basically, several years ago, there was a narrowing of the footpath in front of the adjacent property. Payment was made to the then owner, and that was subsequently passed on to the land registry, who failed to register it properly. The owner actually lived in Thailand and has unfortunately died. Hasn't left a will, so the thing is subject to probate. So where we are now really is the applicant wants to, as he always has, to put the footpath in along the whole of the length of that. This is an expedient method of having the crossing, which will be temporary, simply to secure a section 278 agreement, which will enable the Belmount to be constructed and the frontage of the site to be finished off. So it's it's a bit of a complex situation. Your officers have very well explained the situation in the report. The main reason why, and because of that, the main reason why I've registered to speak tonight is simply to be here to answer any questions or queries that may arise, from this matter. So I won't waste the committee's time talking any more on this matter because it's well covered in your report. Thank you.
Very much. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker?
In which case, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, any comments, questions? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this site has been, it started pre-COVID times. And I think the whole village will be really pleased to see this issue settled. I understand the complication with the footpath, but actually along that way, the footpath is quite narrow in lots of places. I'm not concerned about that at all. I think, and it sounds as if it's going to be resolved anyway. So I'd be really pleased to see this site finished. So I'm very happy with the recommendation, Kev. And I will move that recommendation, Chairman.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who's speak? Any alternative recommendation? In which case it's been moved and seconded for approval. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you very much. That's great. We now move to application 392 for Old Brogan Farms, Wood Lane, Worcester Heath, which I'm sure you remember we had a site visit on recently. Anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add. It was deferred from last board to carry out that site visit, which was well attended. And we looked at all the buildings that were going to be removed and replaced with this building in its place.
Members, any comments, questions, proposals? With the recommendation. Thank you. Thank you very much. All those in favour of permission being granted? And that's the unanimous. Thank you very much. We now have applications of 388 for 1 Eden Close, Jordan. Mr. Socket has indicated he might speak. Mr. Socket, if you could take the chair while Mr. Collinson introduces his report. Mr. Collinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was considered at the previous board meeting where members resolved to defer it for a future meeting to allow the applicant the opportunity to submit revised plans if they wish that address the concerns raised by members. Members at that meeting concluded that the proposal wasn't acceptable in its form and required further consideration of alternative design options to mitigate two issues: impact on the neighbouring property, and then secondly, impact on the character of the surrounding area. So those two main issues. Since the report has been made, there have been 6 letters of support. I forwarded round 5 already. Just received one later on this afternoon that I've not been able to copy to you, but on similar grounds to the other 5 that you have in support of the application. The report is written based on members' concerns, including the weight added to the policies in the Dordon neighbourhood plan. Since that last meeting, the application has been amended slightly, reducing the height of the of the garage from the rear of the site, then sloping upwards. Members may want to fully consider whether this still has that impact that they were concerned about in terms of impact on the neighbour, and secondly, the impact on the character of the area. As you'll see from the agenda, part A from paragraphs 2.5 to 213 outlines the concerns raised in terms of impact on neighbour, and from 214 to 217 indicates about the concerns on the character and appearance of the area. Obviously, appended to the report was the report by my officers on the application that recommended the application be approved. Members now need to consider the dangers, and whether it overcomes those 2 reasons for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. But, Mr. Doggett, welcome back to the council house. Good to see you again. You may not remember the rules on public engagement, so my colleague will now explain.
Good afternoon, good evening, sorry. You've got 3 minutes to speak. At the 2-minute marker, I will remind you that you've got 1 minute outstanding. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Thank you. Yes, well, whilst we appreciate that 2 rows of bricks have been removed from the back of the building, the footprint of it has not changed. And in our view, the large size of the current building and its proximity to our boundary and our house continues to affect us, and including increasing the building density close to us significantly. Also, the side elevation of the garage runs along our boundary parallel to our lounge, with the roof sloping upwards, so that the unchanged higher wall towards the front of the garage is still opposite to our second lounge window, and so it can still affect us. And we appreciate the officers' detailed conclusions in their report and recommendations in this regard. We also note that in the original planning permission for the whole estate in 2023, number 2015, the area of this garage store was set out to be a green space near the entrance of the estate. We've seen the objection of the Dordon Parish Council and agree that this green space will be more in line with the policy DNP8 in the Dordon Neighbourhood Plan, as well as in line with the 2023 Planning Permission. And we do believe that the Dordon Neighbourhood Plan, under the North Warwickshire Local Plan, is very important for Dordon, indeed, as are neighbourhood plans for our other communities in North Warwickshire. And we were glad to read today and in the documents, the officers' recommendations and those arising from the North Warwickshire Local Plan and the whole mention of the Dordon Neighbourhood Plan in the recommendations of the officers, which we support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? In which case, thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is Mr. Simon Glover. Mr. Glover, if you'd take the chair. So welcome back to the council house, Mr. Glover. Good to see you. And because we are all getting on and don't remember, my colleague will now explain the rules on public speaking.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker, you've got 1 minute outstanding, and I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Hi, good to be back. Just a quick note on a residents meeting that we had last week. All residents fully support this application and have issued a direction to the committee to take their opinions on board. The members represent not only the 1 resident objecting, but the 6 residents and owners on the site that all support the application. So the general consensus is that you should take everybody's account into consideration. Obviously, we've had concerns during the application in relation to the last meeting notes change significantly to this meeting notes. And what I'm concerned about is a planning professional or their professional should write the reports based on their opinions, not on the opinions of the members. So you have to be careful not to cross certain lines, and we're in the process of reviewing that. But members, if you look at the conclusions, it predetermines what's going to happen tonight. So the report reads, despite a minor amendment, the proposal remains unacceptable as it fails to address the concerns previously raised. So that's predetermined what's going to happen tonight, which could set a precedent. I've dealt with a number of cases that become unlawful because the decision was unlawful based on opinion, and I've also dealt with judicial reviews. What I'm asking the members to do is to consider that the resident won't be actually able to see this garage because we've already established that fencing can be surrounding the site and preclude any view. The owner has no legal rights, which I accept are a separate issue, but they've agreed. I'm a gentleman. What I agree is a gentleman's agreement. Within the title deeds, they've agreed not to raise any objections to any building on the land. So you look at the intention of the parties when they signed that document whilst the land was going to be built on. And also consider the Dordon neighbourhood plan that the objectors raised. The fact is, the planning officers, being the professionals, have already taken the view that it doesn't harm it. So you have to look, an inspector will look at the professionals and he'll also look at costs. So if we go to appeal exception, in my view, we'll predetermine the decision. That's my view. I'm entitled to that based on the evidence before me. So I would ask members to consider the 6 people that live on that site and the only people that can see it. When we put the fence around fully, that will take away any objections, then the only people that are ever going to see it is our residents. So it's totally unfair, honestly. And I'll stand my ground because I just feel as though it's unfair. I'm happy for people to make a decision, but the whole of this and the latest report re-emphasises that it's just not right. I've never seen it in 40 years of doing it. The situation is that it's a small flat roofed garage that people can park on. So all you're doing is looking at putting a roof on a parking space. It's just goes beyond belief, to be honest. But I accept you're all here to make a vote, and we'll deal with it as we do. I'm really sorry that it's come to this, but it's very sad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? Councillor Lockley.
Just want to, excuse me, I've got a really bad frog in my throat tonight. Just want to ask the officers really how much weight in the Dordon neighbourhood plan would have in any objection. Sorry.
The Dordon neighbourhood plan is part of the development plan, as is the.
Sorry, can I, before you go on,
Yeah.
we are studying questions for our
Sorry.
speaker. Are there any questions for the speaker?
Sorry.
No? Okay, Mr. Collins.
Yeah, the development plan is both the North Warwickshire local plan as well as the Dordon neighbourhood plan. So in terms of the weight you attribute to those policies, it's full weight and whether it accords with it or not. Some of them can be, some of the policies when it comes down to design or impact on neighbours is obviously quite site specific. We as officers have given our view, which is at Appendix A, and the board's sort of considerations are within the main content of it from the discussions at the last meeting. And that covers what was discussed in terms of both impact on the neighbours following that site visit, which looked at the neighbouring windows and the position of the garage, and then character of the area. The resolution is quite important at that meeting, that last meeting, because it was clear and resolved that the 2 matters were impact on the neighbour and character of the area. In terms of character of the area, you members decided that the garage where it was had an impact on the character of the area, and therefore, although the roof has been reduced, I would say there is still a building there. So actually the impact on the character of the area is still there, hasn't been resolved. But it is up to you to make that judgment and on the 2 issues, resolve impact on the neighbour and character of the area. Are they still there or have they been overcome?
So members, you'll be aware that our last speaker raised some concerns over the nature of the report, whether it's predetermination or prejudicial. I just think it would be helpful to have some legal guidance in that regard.
Through you, Chair, officer reports are not predetermined. They're not biased. They report in the report simply the facts. No officers take sides and provide you with details of the application, pros, cons, and it is for you with an open mind to determine this application.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies, Chair, this might have been a question for the previous speaker. I think, I'm just wondering, as I understand it, the original consent for this site was that that area would remain a green space. And that was part of the concern that it didn't comply with our policies now, because that was meant to be a green space and it's not. And I just wondered what's potentially changed as to why is that now, or why was that not kept as a green space and why has it now been built on?
Yeah, I can't obviously answer that. It's obviously down to each person applicant what their intentions are. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really answer that.
Yeah, which is why I
And
apologise.
that's
That's been a
we
question.
did talk about that in the previous meeting. wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, and that's why we determined that it didn't comply with the policies because it didn't meet that openness, etc. I'm just wondering, the previous application or the previous consent would have been given knowing that that was a green space, and just wondered what had changed potentially.
And all I can say, I guess, is that any applicant can submit an application for a variation at any point. It's perfectly reasonable to say, I've changed my mind, or I now want something which is not what was foreseen within the plan. And then you have to determine whether you agree or you disagree. Any other comments, members, or questions? Councillor James?
Just to say, Chair, I wasn't at the last meeting when you discussed it before, but I did attend the site visit. Nothing I've heard tonight has sort of made me change my opinion. I've done that site visit in relation to the character and appearance and the impact on the neighbours. So I still support refusal. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any proposals, members? I'm happy to move the recommendation printed in the most recent report, which is for refusal for the two reinterstations. Do a second and second. Thank you very much. Is there anybody wish to propose an alternative? In which case, planning consent being refused has been proposed and seconded. Can I see those in favour of refusal? And those against? Any abstentions? The abstention. So planning consent is refused. We now move to application number 431 for 26 Salisbury Drive, Water Orton. Anthony Roberts, Mr. Roberts has indicated that speaker. The speaker's chair, while Mr. Collinson introduces his report. Mr. Collinson.
Yeah, apology. This is a retrospective application for a garden building to the rear of 26 Salisbury Drive. As you can see from the agenda and from the photographs, the building is positioned at the rear of the property in the garden area. The issues that have been raised by objectors relate to position of that outbuilding and its impact on residential amenity. Hopefully, you can see from the location plan, the properties in the area have quite long gardens, and although the building, which could be, you could put up a building up to 2.5 meters high without requiring planning permission. This has a roof on and therefore requires planning permission. Visually, from a planning point of view, a flat roof doesn't look as good as one with a pitched roof. So there's a dilemma here. So you need to look at the impact of a pitched roof on the impact of the neighbouring properties. What we do have is photographs that show the relationship of the outbuilding being used as a shed for hobbies, etc., as you can see from the left-hand side, and then a view from the neighbour which shows with the pitched roof on without tiles at the present time, shows the relationship between the properties at the rear as well. We have some more photos again that show its distance to boundary. Again, it's set away from the boundary slightly, reducing the impact. Doesn't look overly high in terms of loss of sunlight and daylight. And again, there, the neighbouring properties photographs show again the relationship with the neighbouring properties. The conclusion that we've reached, we've looked at principle of the development, character and appearance, impact on the neighbouring properties, but overall, officers consider that it won't have a detrimental impact on the neighbouring gardens, either their amenity, sunlight or daylight, because of its position and length of existing garden areas, and therefore our recommendation is that the application be approved.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roberts, welcome to the council house. You would be surprised to hear that my colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. At the 2-minute marker, I'll remind you you've got 1 minute outstanding, and I will start the clock when you start speaking.
Right, thank you. I am here to represent and convey the views of 6 households located around 26 Salisbury Drive. We have been informed that Jacob Baldwin's report includes 2 statements with which we all strongly disagree. Firstly, the height of the shed in question is actually 4 metres as measured by the next door neighbour, not 3.45 metres as stated by Mr. Baldwin. We do not need to remind you that the building regulations allow only a height of 2.5 metres due to the proximity of this shed to the fencing. We wonder if the dimensions submitted by the householder have been double checked. Secondly, we find laughable Mr. Baldwin's statement that neighbours are not impacted by the size and height of the shed. Why do you think a reported 9 complaints from all around were submitted? Most of the neighbouring houses have sheds or greenhouses roughly the height of a fence, but this isn't a normal shed. As you can see from the photographs provided, if our gardens were 30 metres long, this may be not such an eyesore, but the shed in question is only 12 metres from the building line at the rear of nearby houses. We are very disappointed by Mr. Baldwin's recommendation that retrospective planning permission be granted, meaning the householder has plainly broken the rules, yet gets away with it. It is too late and possibly unreasonable to expect the shed to be taken down altogether.
1 minute outstanding.
But it is not too late for the high roof to be removed and replaced with a lower, flattish, less intrusive one. This is the outcome we are seeking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? In which case, thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is Joan Mulvey. Ms. Mulvey, welcome to the council. My colleague will explain the rules on public speaking.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2-minute mark that you've got 1 minute outstanding. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name's Joan Mulvey and I live at number 26 Salisbury Drive. I'm here to ask you to grant retrospective planning for our dog kennel and garden shed. The shed kennel is single storey and it sits in the rear of my garden. It's clearly secondary to the main house and is not visible to the main street. It is built to a good standard using quality materials and is in keeping with the character of Walter Orton. Regrettably, we were not aware that by building within 2 metres of our property boundary, the maximum permitted height without planning permission would be reduced from 4 metres to 2.5 metres, which we have exceeded by using a pitched roof, and this is why this application is before you today. We chose a pitched roof because it adds to the character of the shed kennel and is more in keeping with the traditional domestic character of the buildings in Waterorton. In our view, this helps it sit sympathetically within the garden setting and makes it more in keeping with the character of the area than a more utilitarian flat roof structure would have been. We would also note that the structure is not tight against the property boundary and does leave space to walk around it, which reduces the visual impact when viewed from neighbouring properties. We believe that the outbuilding is in keeping with national policy in the National Policy Framework, Planning Policy Framework, which asks for well-designed, small-scale development that is sympathetic to local character and protects amenity. This outbuilding is modest, domestic in appearance and uses neutral quality materials such as oak timber boards as cladding. It contains upcycled units for storage and a dog kennel to support our family life. At the local level, the North Warwickshire Local Plan and the Waterorton Design Guide emphasise context-sensitive development that respects village character and neighbour amenity. The proposed outbuilding adheres to these expectations. Oak timber cladding and a pitch roof complement the local architecture as well as reflecting the form of the most house of the property. We would also like to note that there is a precedent for similar pitched roofed outbuildings in the neighbourhood, such as those at 85 and 89 Coleshill Road, which demonstrate that outbuildings of this size and scale are acceptable within the neighbourhood. There are also flat roof outbuildings with the same cluster of houses, such as those at number 20 Salisbury Drive and 9 Overton Road directly opposite. We are aware of concerns that the garden side windows face back towards neighbouring properties. These windows are small and given the intended domestic use of the building, we do not believe they pose an overlooking issue. Notably, similar windows would have been entirely permissible under permitted development if the building had remained under 2.5 metres. However,
minutes are up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam, do you have any questions for our speaker? Councillor Watson?
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. Just a question really. Would you be opposed to putting a flat roof on the outbuilding?
We'd rather keep the pitched roof because we think it sits better with the actual structure of the building. But no, if we have to, we will, we'll adhere to whatever the decision is. However, we would like to keep the pitched roof.
Is there any other reason other than, you just wanting to? I mean, is there any practical reasons?
No, not that I can think of. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry. I missed you, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, you could put a flat roof on it or an angled roof. What about a lower pitch? I know there are limits once you've got a pitch roof to a lower pitch. Personally, aesthetically, I prefer a pitch roof to a flat roof or even an angled roof. So would you consider perhaps a lower pitch?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Before we move on, Mr. Constant, there is a question over what is the height that was raised by the first speaker. So how comfortable are you that it is 3.45 as opposed to any other height?
Yeah, the plans are annotated at 3.45 metres. It may be, there's an indication that it was from the neighbour's property. So it may be that the neighbour is measuring from their garden land, which is at a lower level. But the application in front of you, the plans are annotated, show the measurements on. So that's what's in front of you at 3.45 metres.
So you're very comfortable with 6.45 from the height from the ground at that part?
And looking from the photographs as well and trying to work out the heights of certainly the shed on the, you can see a darker brown shed next to it. on the right-hand photograph as well. It's not, that would have to be sort of 2 metres high, knowing sheds, not that I've got lots. It doesn't, it certainly isn't 4 metres looking at, in comparison of the two photographs there. The photograph of the larger shed with the pitch roof and the smaller one next to it.
Okay, thank you. I can see one of the members for Waterford. Is there anything you'd like to say, Jack?
Not specifically, and we'll try and keep it as planning matters as much as possible. This matter has been raised, and I've had representations from both sides of the argument. My feeling is that again it would be nice if all parties could come out with something that would please them all. I have to say is that when I went and saw the shed to start with, I was a little taken aback. We've seen the level of the pitch above the fence, which is how I made a judgment from it. Again, I can totally see the arguments. It is a good solid construction. It is of good character. It is made of good materials. It is a good building. It is just simply around the size and the level of height above it. I know that when you hear representation that everyone's trying to skew the language slightly to their side to give the best. Is that I'm not sure if that's it modest, because it is an imposing structure. It's a quality structure, but I'm not sure I can describe it as modest. I'm not sure as well around when the point was made by the officer in relation to the length of the garden. And again, although of the sites mentioned, I don't know about the size of the gardens of those things. I wish I'd known, so I could have gone and checked, so I could make the value judgment relating to it. My feeling is that it would be nice if some kind of compromise could be reached within the residents. My feeling is that a flat roof would not sit so proudly above the neighbouring fences. Would be my immediate reaction if I was living there, but I'm guided by the officers because, like I said, I am no expert when it comes to actual planning matters.
Thank you. Councillor Hayfield.
Also, I'm in difficulty when I'm dealing with a retrospective application. I'm thinking that if we were seeing the plans for this anew, and we were looking at the plans, and they wanted to build that, they hadn't built it yet, they wanted to build it, and these are the plans we wanted to look at, I suspect we would be saying that the roof is too high. Whether you favour pitched or sloping, I think we would say that that creates would create too big an impact in the way that it's being built. And I have to say, I have sympathy with that. I think it's a big shed, and from surrounding areas, it's going to be fairly obvious as a big shed. If a compromise can be reached where the pitch is reduced, or even a sloping roof, although I understand people's preference for pitch ones, I think the visual intrusion of that building would be on the neighbours would be substantially reduced. So I'm reluctant to support just a blanket grant of the retrospective application as it is now.
Anyone else? Councillor Watford.
To agree with my colleague over there, but what I would sort of need a bit of guidance on is what would we, how would we determine therefore what the height would be and what that would look like. Obviously if it's flat that makes it easier, but if it's a reduced pitch, how much is the reduction before it becomes acceptable, I think is the question. Thank you.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chair. I think it's fine.
Second.
Well, just second that.
So, members, I understand that there clearly is a difference of opinion. I think you have three opportunities. You can grant consent as per the recommendation, you can refuse consent, or you could defer, which I think is more or less what you were saying, Councillor Hayfield, for the parties to talk to each other and see if they can find a compromise. I think I've heard a recommendation that consent is granted. Councillors Waffles and Hayfield, are you proposing an alternative?
I propose deferment then in the hope that a compromise which would be achieved.
So, as I heard consent first, and consent would largely negate deferment, we'll take consent first. So, can I see those in favour of granting consent as per the recommendation? Great. Those against? Those in favour of a deferment, give the opportunity for the applicant and the objectors to see if they can find a compromise. And that is clearly carried. So the application is deferred, and hopefully it'll come back to us in our January meeting when the two parties of the objectors consider what they may or may not be. We now move to I should say, members of the public, if you've heard your application, but then don't be obliged to stay long to go. So we now move members to application number 108, 245 and 215 for what we're calling for the sake of convenience ABM Precision Engineering at Coleshill Road, Ansley. Mr. Lee Ward has indicated he'd like to speak. So, Mr. Ward, if you take the speaker's chair whilst Mr. Collinson introduces his report. Mr. Collinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first application relating to the former ABM Precision Engineering relates to external lighting at the rear of ABM. Members may recall they asked for the application to be deferred so we could look at the lighting and get a lighting expert to look at it. We have done that, and the applicant has made alterations and changes. Our lighting consultant has then looked at those changes and is in agreement that the lighting does accord to their guidance, and therefore officers are recommending that application for external lighting be approved. In terms of the two subsequent applications, application 245 relates to storage containers on the site. Just bear with me. It's demolition of the existing garage and brick buildings that are there, which is in this area of the site. The demolition of those two buildings at the front of the site, and then the placement of storage containers both sides and down the centre of the site. As you can see, there is turning area within there as well to then go back onto the highway in a forward gear. The second application the third application of these relates to the change of use from this parcel of land to the rear, which was originally granted permission ancillary to the front parcel, and this is proposed to be used for siting of storage containers. As you can see from the right-hand plan, the storage containers would be around the outside of the site, and a number of those round there, which is to the rear and to the side. As you'll see from the observations element, there are key factors here. You will have received an email from myself, from the agent, that includes a number of appeal decisions on siting of containers in countryside, and different judgments that a planning inspector has received. There's also the economic impact of that this use would lead to, which can be positive in terms of the overall balance and assessment. As you'll see from page 77 of the report, it considers, first of all, the principle of the development, the impact on open countryside, the noise and light pollution, impact on neighbouring properties, impact on highways. The main issue from officers is the balanced consideration here of the impact of the proposal on open countryside visually and the harm visually to the landscape that siting of containers would lead to. Officers are concerned that it is a relatively prominent position. I will show you photos of the site, and would have a detrimental impact on the character of the area, both visually and through loss of openness. This is the same for both the front site and the rear site too. As you'll see, the top photo shows the existing garage building, which would be demolished, and the impact of the containers visually there, which is the front site, and to the rear of the site, this is where the containers would be at the rear of the site. The bottom photograph, albeit some time ago, shows again views to the rear of the site and the impact of containers there. On balance, officers are recommending that the two applications for storage containers be refused, but as indicated already, the lighting application should be approved.
Thank you very much. Members, you all heard Mr. Constant refer to an email which he'd sent to you containing information from the applicant. Can I just check you've all had that email and had the opportunity to read it? Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ward, welcome to the council house. My colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. At the 2-minute marker, I'll remind you you've got 1 minute outstanding. I'll start the clock when you stop speaking.
Thank you, Chair and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak this evening in support of the 3 applications at the former ADM factory on Coleshill Road. In terms of the lighting application, we welcome the officer's recommendation for approval, and I have no further comments to make, but happy to answer any questions on this if required. For the 2 applications recommended for refusal, we have worked closely with officers and over several months providing all of the requested information. Until very recently, we understood that both applications were progressing positively. The late change to recommendation for refusal came as a surprise given our constructive dialogue to this date. Both applications recommended for refusal have the support of all statutory consultees, including highways. No technical objections have been raised against the proposals. The reasons for refusal, as outlined by Mr. Collinson, are the impact on the open countryside. In our late items that we submitted, we raised a number of successful appeal decisions that supported storage containers in open countryside locations where the visual impact was a particular concern. Officers have cited visual impact, particularly views from the open countryside. However, views from Coleshill Road to the rear of the site are already screened substantially by the buildings. The photo at the bottom is quite a bit out of date for anybody that knows the site. There is now fencing along the front and also fencing about halfway along that back yard area, and the yard looks very different, and that was all subject to previous approvals by this council. We have committed in those approvals to additional boundary planting along the rear boundary and also down the side, which will help provide further screening. The nearest public vantage point to the rear is approximately 530 metres, or just over half a kilometre away on footpath N1, I believe it is. The proposed containers will also be dark green to blend in with the landscape. This is an established industrial site, which despite its rural location can be legitimately used for storage associated with the business. Previously, residential options were not wanted on this site. These applications simply seek to formalise and separate those operations. The land to the rear is currently subject to extremely restricted conditions. However, we are looking to regularise that. The former garage building at the south of the site is in dangerous structural condition and it needs to be demolished. We can demonstrate a local need. The site nearby closed down recently, but that was because the landlord took the land back. The site for similar facility at Mansetta Road has a 6-month plus waiting list. The proposal represent a well-screened development on an existing industrial site with a clear local need and economic benefits. We respectfully ask the committee to support this much-needed facility and investment in the local area. Thank you for your time and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr Ward. Members, do you have any questions, Vice Speaker? Councillor Bell?
Question. I'll just be clear that the applications together would mean there's containers at the back and at the side.
Yes, they are two separate applications,
Yes,
but
so
yes, effectively they
Go
can
round
the
the side. Okay, so as you've mentioned, this is already developed land.
Mhm.
Is the footprint of the land going to be any larger than it is now?
No, this is all on previously developed land. It's either within the garage site or within the strip of land at the back of the former ABM, which this council recently granted a change of use on from agricultural to industrial.
So, and any development after the demolition, is it going to be any higher or is the block going to be any more?
No, it will simply be storage containers, so they will be lower than the existing garage building.
Right, okay. Oh, yes, the change of use from B4 to B8. What?
B2 to B8. So yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that necessary?
Because the existing ABM site is classed as B2. It's classed as general industrial, which does allow for some storage associated with that, which is what the strip of land was approved for at the back. And B8 is general storage and distribution, and that can cover everything from storage containers up to an Amazon warehouse. But obviously, in this case, it's aimed at the placement of storage containers for small local storage for residents and small commercial businesses.
It's not a demand locally for the B2 to remain.
The B2 will remain on the bulk of the site. So the former ABM building is in use under B2 now. That will absolutely remain. This is simply to support the site being an industrial site, as I touched on in my speech. So I'm not introducing anything new here. We've had previous discussions with this council about this site becoming residential, and that was very much resisted. So we're just looking at ways we can support the industrial commercial nature of the site and ensure that continues into the future.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned that another site has recently closed down, a storage site has recently closed down.
Yeah.
Picking up on Councillor Bell's point, it's got quite a lot of containers there. How does the number of containers that you've applied for in the two applications compare to the site that's closing down?
I have to be honest, I don't know off the top of my head. I know there is somebody sat in the public gallery that will know the answer, but I don't know if we can refer to him or not.
Yes.
Can we, Chair? Are you happy with that? Do you know how many?
Yeah, so
on
the site in Pipers Lane had nearing, I think, 250 containers. It was multi-stacked as well. The reason they had to close down was when, like Cast Home Floors, they expanded their building and they needed their land. So hence why there's a massive vacuum in the area for need, hence displayed by the 6-month waiting list, I think, one on Mansetta Road.
Thank you. So we closed down.
We're still less, sorry.
So you closed down site, or the site's closed down, had 250 containers.
On average.
And what's the total number with the two applications here?
Do you have that figure, Mr. Collinson?
Just checking.
Sorry, I've not got that to hand.
Mr. Collinson can't answer.
Oh, okay, sorry. I don't have that figure to hand at the moment.
You can ask Mr. Collinson.
I'll ask you later.
Thank you.
Any other questions, mate? Councillor, is it going to be single height, no double height?
Yes, it's all single stack.
And I Googled it. I know I only look at this site, but you've also got an application in for the Watson site at Burnsend.
Yes.
Does that bring the numbers back up to 200?
It will be roughly in line with that. Yeah, I think there's around 100 on the Burnsend site.
Thank you very much.
Within board is about members, you'll hear to consider the application in front of you, not any other. Any other questions to ask you? Just one or two from me. Yes. When we talked previously, earlier this year, about the application to the rear of the site, was it your intent then that you would use this for storage, or is that a relatively new development?
It's a new development. Obviously, when we went through the change of use for the rear site, very much it was the assumption that it would be used with the ABM, the former ABM building. The tenants that are now in the ABM and are established business in the area don't require that land to the rear, so we're just looking at ways that we can support the site to continue in the future.
You didn't talk to them at the time about whether they need it or not?
I don't think they were tenants at the time. At the time of that particular application, I think they've been on board since.
And at the minute, it's proposed that the hours be from, I think, 9 in the morning, 7 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're looking for, or is that what you need?
Some of these sites, to be honest, we're involved in a number of these sites around Leicestershire and Warwickshire, and some of them are 24/7. I think we initially proposed something along those lines, but in discussion it was agreed to go to 7 till 11 rather than being a 24/7 site. So we would be happy with 7 till 11, yes.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor?
Self-maintained sites, so once they're in there, the people can come and go as they please.
Yes.
At that time.
Yeah, the containers will.
And so you don't provide security, it'd be a locked site.
Yeah.
And, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, it'll operate very similar to the van set of road site, you know.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Mary?
At the moment, our old vehicles stand in the site, fitting onto the actual site, or do you have any parking on the main road?
No, there's no parking on the main road. Certainly in terms of the current uses of the site, they all park within the site.
Councillor?
Could I just check, you were saying that all the containers would stay, excuse my voice, all the containers would stay on the site permanently, so you're talking storage units rather than being on in this whole container there and then taking it away.
Yes, look, with most of these types of sites, once the containers are delivered, they don't move until they reach the end of their operational life. So they are delivered to site, and then people attend. They will have either a key fob or some kind of key code access to access into the site, and then they'll have their own padlock on their units where they can access them as and when they need to within whatever the agreed time.
Just trying to get an idea of the size of vehicles that will be going forwards regularly.
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider is, again, we're involved in a number of these sites, is that it's not, you don't have all of the containers from day one generally. Usually what happens is the containers will come in sort of probably 8 to 10 at a time. Once they're rented out, then you'll bring in the next 8 to 10. That's generally how these sites work. So it won't be, if it were to be granted, it wouldn't be that day one there'd be 100 containers turn up on the site and 100 lorries queued up outside. It would absolutely, they generally come in small numbers, and then once they're rented out, the next ones are delivered, and then once they're on site, they're fixed down.
Thank you. So just following on from some of the answers and information you gave us, given that your customers will have a key fob, how will you enforce the hours restriction on the site?
So again, on some of the other sites, it's literally the gate. If it's without the outside of the times, you can restrict the opening hours in that way. Because they're not manned sites usually.
And if we were going to look at granting consent, you'd be happy to have a condition to that effect?
I think we've agreed to those times with the officers today, yes.
No, to the locking of the gates.
Oh yes, yeah, we can agree to that. Yeah, it can be built into the system.
And on the containers themselves, are these former shipping containers, or is a particular design?
They'd be brand new shipping containers, but dark green shipping containers effectively. Yeah. I think we've got two sizes, which are the 10-foot and the 20-foot ones.
Councillor Waffles?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check with the amount of containers that will be on that site? Do you perceive any issues with the cars and the, transport that are going, where would they park or turn around? Is it going to have an effect on that?
Not particularly. You get a mixed use of them. So some of them might be used by a local builder and maybe goes with his van sort of 7 o'clock in the morning as early as he can. He'll go and pick up his tools for the day, and then he might go back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and take them back. So you do get the odd daily visitor, but that's quite low. Most of them, to be honest, are quite long-term storage. So they'll put stuff in there and just leave it for 6, 12 months plus, pay the monthly rental on it, and it just stays there. So their visits are maybe once or twice a year. Just looking at other sites, we haven't, some other sites that we've looked at, we haven't looked at the traffic data on them, and the trip generation is very low. Like I said, there's some lorries when the containers first come in, but that's probably 8 or 10 containers over a few days are lifted into place. And then after that, the trip generation is generally very low on that.
There'll be enough room for.
Yeah, we've got turning, so you can see just off to the right hand side on that particular proposal where Mr. Collinson's just pointing, thank you. That's sort of a lorry turning space, so we have got turning within the site, yeah.
Thank you.
Within the client's ownership, so in both cases they can turn and leave in a forward gear.
Councillor Hayfield?
Where would the gates be?
The gates?
Gates into the, where are they?
On that one, we would have gates towards the front of the site. I think just where Mr. Collinson's indicating, and then on the other one, there's already some gates halfway down the site, which will be
maintained. And the gates will be closed until a certain point, then open.
Yeah.
I guess the thing that springs through my mind is if a lorry's coming from some distance with a container and it gets there 10, 15 minutes too early, what does it do? Does it park on the roadside?
Question? I'm not sure we can control that. Obviously, everybody delivering to the site or visiting the site will be told of the opening times. If they come earlier, then they would have to stop in a place that it's legal to do so.
Well, exactly, because it's a busy road. I mean, it's a large container lorry parked outside.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not sure it's something that we or the client control. Because as I say, anybody visiting that site would be told what the visiting hours are. If they come out at that time, they would be expected to park in a safe and legal place to do so. Anything that's not in a safe or legal place is enforceable by the authorities, I would say. I'm not sure it's something we can particularly control. In a previous application, we did agree to remove the gates at the very front of the site. There is a gate further into the site where that lorry's turning through. That's a gate there. So there will be space to pull in on that one. On the smaller garage one, that might be more difficult. But there is space at that end of the site for lorries to pull in because we previously agreed to remove the gates that were on the front.
Any other questions, man? In which case, thank you very much for that. Members, in your hand, what would you like to do? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really happy to support the first application for the lighting, so I'm happy to move that.
Well, let's take them in turn, shall we?
Yeah.
So on the issue of the first application for lighting, that seems fairly non-contentious from what I've read. So I suppose the consent is granted for the first application. Is there a seconder? Thank you very much. So that's proposed and seconded. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we now move on to the other two applications, and let's deal with, to an extent, the conversation together on both, because I think it flows into each other. Mr. Conson, anything else to add from what you've heard?
Just in terms of numbers that I think was a query. The smaller site, counting up, there's about 52 on there, and the larger site has nearly 80, albeit some of them are smaller containers, as Mr. Ward indicated. Some smaller, some bigger.
And can you just clarify the issue on parking? Because I think what Councillor Hayfield was getting at is it possible to pull onto the site waiting for the gates to open?
I understood the conversation. That I think the discussion was about the lorries that would be on there with maybe the storage containers on them.
Well, I think it applies to any vehicle, to be honest.
Yeah. this site includes a turning area within it, so the gates from the front are removed, so there's easy access and manoeuvring space there. For the front site, again, there are gates at the front and manoeuvring. I'm not sure whether you could potentially condition that those are opened. I might need to check what the highway officer's response was to that. It would need to be similar opening hours to the use to allow for vehicles to come completely onto the site. But that could be something that could be easily conditioned if necessary, if members were concerned about that.
Councillor Watson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think picking up on that point, and I do understand what Councillor Hayfield was talking about. It seems to me that on the site to the rear, there's plenty of space to pull in off the road to get there. I mean, perhaps the solution is actually you connect them together. You lose some of the containers along that back edge, and you can make it an in and out. Effectively, they come in one side and go out through the other side, which would actually probably satisfy the need for no one being on the road. It always pull in.
Okay, look, I mean, I think there's an issue in terms of a couple of things that would benefit from further discussion, but I'd like to try and assess, is the board moving towards an approval subject to amended conditions, or is the board moving along the lines of the recommendation, which is refusal? We're not the point talking about what the alternative is going to be if overall, given the reasons in the report, members are more inclined towards refusal. And I think inevitably, because this was a recommendation to think about refusal, I can't remember that I've seen anything in here in terms of landscaping. Is there any landscaping proposal?
As you can see from the layout, the majority of the development's hard up to the boundary. There's likely to be fencing along the boundaries, certainly along here. But if members are supportive, it would, for additional landscaping, it would reduce the amount of containers on there. There isn't really that much space other than hard landscaping, which you take as the green palisade fencing.
So, members, any other comments or questions? Councillor Hayfield.
I think in terms of the overall principle of the use of this site, I'm a bit more relaxed, but I do have that concern over the practicalities of its operation, particularly as you come down Pipers Lane, for example, to join that main road. The visibility is never very good. It's a bit of a difficult area because the road drops away quite sharply then down into Ransley Common. I just worry a bit about that. I personally would like that looked at more.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, just on that. I mean, any site with restricted hours access is going to have this issue. And I think the speaker answered it quite rightly. It's not their responsibility, basically. The hours will be restricted. If people don't get there at that hour, they've got to find somewhere safe and legal to park, and not on that road. And it would be very obvious that it's not safe and legal to park on that road. And also, as has been said, once the containers are in there, it's very unlikely that they'll be moved again for quite a while. And I know we can only talk about the site that we're looking at, but I'll just mention, because the speaker mentioned it, on Manchester Road, which is also enhanced, we've got storage there. It's a very, very busy road, and we were worried about the traffic, and it's proved to be no issue whatsoever. It has been very acceptable. I've been very confused by reading this report, where it keeps referring to open countryside. This is a previously developed site that was industrial. It's still going to be the same. In fact, some of the buildings are going to be taken down and albeit replaced by containers. It's not going to be any bigger than it is now. It's in an area that it is. There's no housing near it. It's actually opposite another industrial estate, although it's well screened, I have to say. So I've got no problem with these applications, and I'd be very happy to propose approval for both of those applications.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Similar, I mean, I'm minded to answer your early point, I'm minded to approve, but I would like perhaps see some re-engineering to create perhaps a one-way system in and out to negate the need to stop on the road.
It's still the same, actually.
And so, perhaps speaking slightly against what you both just said, in my view, the proposal in front of us that by the virtue of its scale, form and intensity of use, this will be virtually intrusive, visually intrusive, and a prominent feature which will detract from the rural character. And I think it's a question of, if you stand with your back to the site and look, it's open countryside. If you stand with your front to the site, it's an industrial estate. I don't think it's saying that this isn't an industrial estate. It's saying there is a rural aspect to it which you have to consider. I'd equally say it's not entirely unreasonable for us to understand how vehicles will safely enter and exit the site and wait. We have a number of applications where we specifically require the applicant to provide off-road parking. That we've done on a number of occasions. Councillor Waffles.
If it's behind the gates, surely if we did suggest that Councillor Watson said, would it make no difference though, because the gates will still be shut?
Yeah, but as I understand it, on the right, if you look at that picture on the right hand side, that bit on the right hand side, the gate is at the back, so you can actually pull off the road into that space.
So you mean you would suggest that would be open out of the hours?
No, there's no gate at the front. If the front gate's removed, so that space is there. So you could pull in there and then go round the site in a one way and come out the other way.
Then the site will be open all the time.
No, there's a gate at the back. Gate's there.
You can do that now.
And that is what is being proposed already. What is not being proposed is that there is a link between the red area and the blue area.
Yeah, sorry, the reason I make that point is because the bit on the left that you can see there,
I agree with
it's very close to the road, so you couldn't get into there. Whereas if you make that bit that's your entrance on the right, you could always pull off the road, sit in that area, go through the gate when it's open, go all the way around and then out that way.
Absolutely.
So look, the principle of the refusal reason is open countryside. I'd just like as a straw poll, is anyone comfortable with refusal because of the open countryside issue? Okay, so if we're moving on, we're looking more towards granting consent under what terms and conditions. I think I would feel more comfortable if this were to be deferred for the officers to talk to the applicant about how those issues will be addressed. I don't think it need take a long time. Whether this is operated as one site or two sites, and whether you can get everyone in through the existing off-road access, that strikes me as that could be achieved. But I think it is absolutely safer for us as a planning authority to have a clear answer. At the minute, if you were to grant consent, there are no conditions. So if you're looking at an approval, we would ordinarily expect there to be conditions to planning application, unless you have them ready, Councillor Watts.
Now, could we defer and have some conditions around that in and out?
You could absolutely defer for consideration of conditions and the issues that we talked about this evening.
Happy to second that too.
Mr. Collinson.
I don't know, rather than delegating it for another board, deferring it for another board, whether you want to delegate the decision in consultation with yourselves to look at the conditions and the issues.
I suspect I'm not going to like it, but Councillor Hayfield.
I'll be comfortable with it. I mean, we've made it clear what the concerns are. If those can be addressed to conditions that you then subsequently agree, I'm comfortable with that.
Look, members, it's up to you. I'm genuinely uncomfortable with unless there is a clear outcome. I'm uncomfortable with delegation to a smaller group. We have a planning board for a planning board to make decisions. I'd rather you actually understood what's being proposed and make a decision on that.
For those developments.
So I think it's been proposed and seconded for deferral. It's been, I think, proposed and seconded for delegation, but not delegation. So Councillor Bell and Councillor Watson, I think you were saying you were in favour of granting consent as it is. Is that?
No, with
have I
conditions, no. No,
So
with
Councillor Bell, you will propose.
I was
consent.
proposing, yes, approval, because there's been no highways objection to this, and they've looked at it quite clearly, and they know how busy that road is. So yes, I would be happy to approve.
So Councillor Bell is proposing consent. Is there a second? Second. And Councillor Durbix and I think it was more or less me, but Councillor Phillips were in favour of a deferment. So let's just test the water. All those in favour of consent tonight? 2. Those against? More than 2. Those in favour of, I'd just like to be sure that we're getting the right way. There's a suggestion that it's deferral to come back to a board with the issues outlined or delegated for the officers to do.
Not delegated.
Come back to the board.
Suggesting.
Come back to the board, aren't we?
We should come back to
Just
board.
I would be happy to vote in favour of approval with the condition that the gates are locked from when it's not open, because at the moment that's not a condition.
And there are no conditions at the minute,
Yeah.
none at all. And that's really where we're going for in terms of what the conditions might be.
Yeah, so I'm suggesting that as a condition.
So
Approval with that condition.
with only that condition?
Okay.
Because normally we'd have a bunch of other conditions. We have to develop within so many months of the consent and other stuff on drainage and this. So I have a proposal that is deferred and brought back to the next meeting of the board for consideration, further consideration, having discussed all the issues that we talked about this evening. Right, it's been proposed and seconded. Can I see those in favour? Any against? So that item is deferred and we'll come back to the. We now move on to application number 186 for land to the south east of Kirby Glebe Farm, Hartsfield. Mr. Connaughton, anything to add to your report?
No, Mr. Chairman. Recommendation is for refusal. You look at, apologies, the conclusions that planning balance, section 10 on the agenda, which goes through both the farms and the weight afforded to the applications as well. As you'll see at 10.3, there's the balance there, and then the rest of the paragraphs in 10 indicate that the balance should be weighs in favour of refusing the applications.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions or proposals? All good. Councillor Bell.
Those recommendations for refusal.
Councillor Hunt, please. Didn't do anything.
Second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Media. Are there any other comments or proposals?
Right, case I thought we bought a carriage clock.
I'm confused, Councillor, with I'll let you on you then. So it's been proposed and seconded that planning consent be refused, and I see those in favour. And that's the application number 423, if you believe, in 2022 for land to the south of Watling Street, Corbyn. Anything to add to your report?
Yes, sorry. Do you need to mention things with me? Get to the right element. There's So this relates to the Myra application. It's brought. Apologies, going to the right one. Brought to you for two reasons. In that we have a response from National Highways that has considered an alternative access arrangement solution for A5 junction from Drayton Lane, Woodford Lane. You will have received comments from an objector relating to that, indicating that you should reconsider the application and include a revised planning condition, taking into account revised access. In terms of the response from National Highways, it remains their position that the applicant's submitted mitigation is appropriate, and the conditions that they recommended were appropriate, and therefore the response from National Highways reinforces the resolution already reached by the board in June 2025, and there should be no reconsideration of the merits or otherwise of the application. In part 4 on the agenda, I've outlined, because of case law, we need to now outline what's in a section 106 agreement. So in section 4 there on the agenda, I've outlined the contributions that are sought in terms of skills, etc., and money towards the traffic regulation order. The recommendation is reported for information only, and therefore officers consider that recommendation should stand.
So, Mr. Constant, I'm struggling to see, if you like, an ongoing reason in section 4 as to why the section 106 agreement is not completed.
Yes, sorry, these take a long time, as I'm sure the legal services manager next to you will indicate. They do take, they're quite complex. It does come down to wording, precise wording on things, checking all the details, but we're nearly there on the basis of these two issues: skills and training monies, ensuring we get the best for the borough long term, and the requirement for monies toward the traffic regulation order as well. Unfortunately, they do take a while to complete.
I can tell. 2022.
Well, the resolution was in June 2025, and it's only.
Well, that's the second one. We had a previous one before. The outcome from the board was the same. Yes, I am, please.
And following on from what you're saying, is there any indication when they're going to get a spade in the ground and actually start the work? Because, as you say, it'd be 2026 in a few weeks' time. And although I'm going away for Christmas, I am concerned that it's going to happen. Thank you.
I think that's how much fun it is to spot. That's not the intent. My intent is to recognise the issues that you've raised in paragraphs 1 to 4, and then to say, like my perception is the board has discussed this on 2 occasions, and it's been a unanimous agreement on 2 occasions to complete. I absolutely accept that it takes time to go through these things. We'd like to see the end of the light, sort of the light beyond the tunnel. So how long do you think it might take? Legal opinion.
It's doing a variety between all parties. So at the moment,
I would say beginning of next year that it will be complete, signed,
and the
decision issued.
So at the minute, the parties are ourselves, the Kent Council, John Lewis Enser, Glyn Richard Williams, and Ariba Myra Limited. You're fairly comfortable that the statutory parties and the individual names can get to an agreement on that by the beginning of next year? Yeah. And so, members, I'd like to agree with the recommendation. for peaceful noting. And that we look forward to further report in our January meeting, concluding this issue.
We're stipulating which January meeting.
Oh, we certainly are, Councillor.
But can I say, if you say January, that actually with Christmas coming, you've got a week.
Yeah, well, yes. I asked a very open question.
Yeah.
Early January. I mean, if you want to be generous, you can move to February, but look, I want an end.
I'll second you and take a vote on it now while the going's good.
Very good.
So, any other comments?
Get it done.
Are you all content with noting and a report of January, but if pushed to February?
Yeah.
Those in
Happy
favour?
Christmas, Mr. Collinson.
Anybody against? Thank you very much. Application of the consultation 21. Land to the west of Forms Lane, near Marston. Collinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a consultation on the sand and gravel extraction in Lee Marsden. We're consultee on this application. The report outlines what's been submitted with the application, and part 5 of the agenda in front of you indicates the issues. It is an allocation, so in principle there can be no concerns. However, heritage, landscape, environmental impacts are an issue, and therefore officers have outlined that we propose to make comments to the candidate council that they will refer to when making a decision on the application.
Thanks very much. Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you may have expected me to, I have serious concerns with this application. I was at county at the time it was talked about, and the concerns were raised then. My big two very big concerns. It talks about movements. It talks about 30 up to a maximum of 120. That seems a big delta to me. So is it 30 a day or is it 120 a day? I think, you know, the fact that that's the, and when you look at the plan, it talks about access off of the 4097 Kingsbury Road via the existing HS2 site. I was at HS2 Special Management Zone meeting, and HS2 have categorically stated they do not have authority to access this site via their land. So if that's the case, I'd be very interested to know how county propose they get on and off this site with somewhere between 30 and 120 truck movements on top of all the HS2 works that are going on in that area as well.
I think the report says there'll be between 30 and 60 arriving and 120 movements. So if you like, 120 is 60 in and out.
Yeah, 60, yeah.
Yeah, have I read that properly?
I think 120 is a maximum that's been stipulated by the applicant. So the worst case scenario is 120 in and out per day at the very busy periods. The 30 to 60 was at other periods when it's not as busy. The worst case scenario.
Is it 120 arriving? Because I did hear 240 at one point, which would support
It would
that.
be 120 HGVs in and out per day, so it would be, I think that would be 240 movements. So 120 in, 120 out.
And my big concern, sorry, Chair, is that if they've not got access on straight onto the 4097 and down to Dunton Island, the only other accesses to and from that site is Hams Lane up by Hams Hall or Blackgreaves Lane. So I just cannot see how you can throw another up to 240 trucks at that infrastructure on top of all the HS2 works that are ongoing there at the moment.
So the recommendation is that we object on the basis of the arguments in the report as further identified by what Councillor Watson has just said. Are you proposing that?
No, sir.
Seconded. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Land adjacent to 158 Hurley Common, Hurley, to ratify the action taken by the Chief Executive under his urgent business. are we all content to note and endorse that decision? Yep, so moved. So a seconder, I'll second it. All those in favour? Thanks very much. Move that in accordance with section 4A of the Local Government Act, the public investigates through. And the second one, all those in favour? Thank you.